Hi everyone, I'm Ella's mom, and today I'm going to read a book called Pablo Neruda, Poet of the People. This is one of my favorite poets, and I'm excited to share a little bit about him with you. Once there was a little boy named Naphtali who loved wild things wildly and quiet things quietly. From the moment he could talk, Naphtali surrounded himself with words that whirled and swirled, just like the river that ran near his home in Chile. Naphtali loved to play in the forest, ride horseback, and swim in the river with his friends. Naphtali's father was a train conductor, and sometimes he would take his son with him on the train. Whenever the train made a stop, Naphtali would run off into the forest to search for beetles and birds' eggs and tall ferns that dripped water like tears. Naphtali wasn't very good at soccer or at throwing acorns like his friends, but he loved to read and discover magic between the pages of books. A very special teacher named Gabriela Mistral gave him wonderful books from faraway places, and Naphtali decided he wanted to be a writer too. When he was a teenager, Naphtali changed his name to Pablo Neruda and began publishing his poems. He always wrote in green ink, the color of the ferns in the forest and the grass beneath his feet. Pablo moved to the big city of Santiago and met other writers. Together, Pablo and his friends walked the streets wearing great black capes and tall hats. They talked about books and shared their poems with all who would listen. Pablo wrote poems about the things he loved, things made by his artist friends, things found at the marketplace, and things he saw in nature. He wrote about scissors and thimbles, and chairs and rings. He wrote about buttons and feathers, and shoes and hats. He wrote about velvet cloth, the color of the sea. Pablo loved opposites, so he wrote about fire and rain, and spring and fall. In the streets and with his friends, Pablo saw joy and sadness, so he wrote about both. Pablo loved the stones of Chile. He wrote about stones rolled by waves onto the beach and stones polished by sand and salt. He wrote about stones tumbling down the mountaintops and stones in the hands of the stonecutters. Pablo loved the sea and the feel of the sand beneath his feet. He loved walking along the beach near his home in Chile. He found starfish and seaweed, red crabs, and green water. He saw dolphins playing in the surf and rusty anchors washed ashore. Pablo wrote about the children who played in the sea foam and the sand, skipping stones and chasing waves. He wanted each child to share in Chile's wealth and hope. Pablo had many homes. One was in Spain, half a world away. This home was called the House of Flowers because of the red flowers blooming from every corner. The House of Flowers was always filled with dogs and people, young and old. Because above all things and above all words, Pablo Neruda loved people. Pablo loved mothers and fathers, poets and artists, children and neighbors, and his many friends around the world. He opened his arms to them all. When Pablo saw the coal miners working dangerous jobs for little money, he was angry. When he saw that they were cold and hungry and sick, he decided to share their story. He joined those who fought for justice and wrote poems to honor all workers who struggled for freedom. Even when his poems made leaders angry, he would not be silenced because he was a poet of the people. When soldiers came to get him, Pablo hid in the homes of friends and then escaped on a horse over the mountains of Chile. Pablo Neruda was brave. He wasn't afraid to share the story of Chile with the world. Pablo's voice was heard across nations and oceans. From his poems grew flowers of hope and dreams of peace. That's it. I wish I could have been there in person, but I hope you enjoyed the story, and I hope you go home and search some of Pablo Neruda's poems. Take care. Bye.